Will the SEC softball title come down to the last day of the regular season in 2025? Well, I think there's a great chance we don't know who wins the best league in all of college softball until Saturday, May 3rd, when the final SEC games are played in the regular season. I've predicted every series outcome for every team, calculated all the records, and I'm going to give you my 2025 SEC softball predicted order of finish. We'll get to that, but before we do, please like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. If you love college softball content, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you'll see multiple videos that I drop a week, which are all dedicated to college softball. Let's get to the rankings. All right, first, let's start with the bottom two teams. I have Ole Miss at 15, Auburn at 14. Let's start with the Rebels. I've got a 6-18 SEC record for Ole Miss with no series wins in 2025. I do have one win each in the Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Georgia, and Mississippi State series. But I just think with the turnover on the roster, the Rebels are going to finish with one fewer win than they did last year in conference. But there's some good players to talk about. Aaliyah Benford is a very good player. I think she's going to be a two-way star in Oxford. But as of right now, somebody's got to finish 15. I've got Ole Miss finishing at 15. At number 14, I've got the Auburn Tigers with a 7-17 record. I do have the Tigers with series wins against Georgia and South Carolina. Both of those series are at home, but I also have Tennessee, Texas, and Florida all sweeping Auburn this year. I think there's a chance this could be a team that's maybe more talented than where they finished in the standings. They were just dealt a brutal schedule with the Vols, Longhorns, and Gators, along with Texas A&M and Georgia. Auburn, a very, very difficult schedule, one of the more difficult schedules probably in the SEC this year. But if this team is an SEC title contender with this schedule or anything close to it, Chris and Kate Malvo, I think, will be your SEC coaches of the year. At 13 and 12, I have South Carolina and Mississippi State, both with an 8-16 record. I've got the Gamecocks with one series win against Ole Miss at home that will keep them out of the cellar in the conference, but just a brutal way to open up conference play. Road trip to Oklahoma to start things off, followed by a home series against a good Georgia squad, then a road trip to LSU. It just doesn't give South Carolina, with a new head coach and a lot of new on the roster, a great chance to build momentum in a league that feels like it's going to be very unforgiving this year. Now, there's some things to like about this squad. Absolutely. New head coach Ashley Chastain. She left Charlotte to take the job in Columbia. She also brought several of her players along with her from Charlotte, including Ariana Rhodey, who hit over 350 last year with 22 home runs. She is a really, really good player and could be one of the best players this year in the SEC. But for now, I've got South Carolina at 13, and I think that this is a pretty decent example, which speaks just to the overall depth of this league, because I think South Carolina's got a chance to have a good softball team in 2025. I've got Mississippi State with an 8-16 record, series wins against Auburn, Missouri, and Ole Miss. All three of those series will be in Starkville. But I also have State getting swept at OU, at Tennessee, and against a Texas team at home. You may see a lot of freshmen from a highly touted class this season for the Bulldogs, mixed in with Ella Wesolowski, who hit over 315 last year. Tough road draw for State, getting the four-time defending champs, a team that made it to OKC last year in Alabama, and the two-time defending champs in the SEC. Those are three of the four series away from Starkville. That's really, really difficult. A team that may end up being better than where I have them picked, they could finish higher if they play well on the road in the SEC, but with that road schedule, going to be difficult. I've got Mississippi State at 12. At 11 and 10, I've got LSU and Missouri. 11-13 record for LSU. I think the Tigers will get series wins over Kentucky, Alabama, and South Carolina. LSU lost a ton of production from last year's team. So I don't see this season ending with an SEC championship for the Tigers. But watch out for true freshman Jaden Heavener, who's going to cause havoc on SEC hitters throughout her career. And I think that she's going to start that havoc in the 2025 season. because I believe the number 2 overall recruit is going to be a big part of things for LSU this season. Don't forget about Sydney Berzon, who's just absolutely electric. 20 wins last year. Had to throw a ton of innings a year ago, so maybe Heavener can take some of that stress away from her in the circle. But Berzon is very, very good. Voted as the number 8 overall player in Softball America's top 100 player rating. She's special. OU transfer Avery Hodge will be big for this team. Ole Miss transfer Jayla Lassiter will also play a big role for LSU this season. There's many, many examples of how deep this league is going to be. I've already mentioned one. But LSU finishing 11 and Missouri at 10, I think, are 2 great examples of how many good, very, very good softball teams are in the SEC this year. Missouri comes in at 10 with an 11-13 record. I've got Mizzou with series wins over Ole Miss and Georgia. So just 2 series wins, but I have them winning at least 1 game in every single SEC series they play. That includes matchups against Oklahoma, against Texas A&M, Alabama, and others as well. Mizzou's going to be very competitive, just like they were last year. A lot of players returning from last year's team, such as Abby Hay offensively, Sierra Harrison in the circle, but they've got to replace Lauren Krings in the circle, who was the ace last year, as well as Jenna Laird, who was just a defensive wizard throughout her career. This team came close. Oh, so close last year. 1 win away from the Women's College World Series. Missouri's good enough to make another strong push to the Women's College World Series, and I expect them to this year with the returning production and just the overall talent level the Tigers have this season. At 9 and 8, I've got Alabama and Georgia. I've got Bama with a 10-14 record with series wins over Mississippi State, Georgia, Missouri, and South Carolina. Alabama wasn't in any way elite offensively last year, and I don't think anyone's going to argue that. But Bama was good enough defensively and good enough in the circle to make a postseason run and make it to Oklahoma City. Will the makeup be different this season in Tuscaloosa? Maybe. For now, I have Bama with a 10-14 record, which is actually the same SEC record the Tide had last year. And like I mentioned, that was still good enough to make a deep postseason run that ended up in the WCWS. Bama needs a big year from Jocelyn Brisky because someone's going to have to replace Kayla Beaver in the circle. Patrick Murphy does bring in a very good recruiting class, top 8 recruiting class coming in. He did a very nice job in the transfer portal with players like Brooke Elistad from Louisiana, Sunbelt Newcomer of the Year, Alexis Papillo, a Northern Iowa transfer who can play multiple positions. Bama's going to need to be able to manufacture more runs this year. But give this program a lot of credit, even when there's question marks, even when maybe there's weaknesses. This program knows how to win when it matters most. Georgia comes in at number 8 with an 11-13 record and series wins over South Carolina, LSU, and Ole Miss. I don't have anyone sweeping the Dogs this year. I've got them winning at least 1 game in every single series. This is a team that today I don't consider a top 5 team, but at the same time, they have enough talent to surprise me and a lot of other people and finish a lot higher than number 8. But this team's got to replace a lot of starters from a team that made it to the Supers last year. There's 3 top 50 recruits on the roster as true freshmen. Paisley Allen was a top 8 player nationally. Georgia didn't necessarily reload through the portal, just the 1 player, and Randy Rolling, a pitcher from Cal. But Dallas Goodnight is back, and all she does is get on base. Very, very athletic player. Also look for Lindy Ray Davis to be a huge part of this order as well. At 7 and 6, I have my biggest surprise with Kentucky and the Arkansas Razorbacks. Very surprised when I did my predictions, which will probably end up being awful, but very surprised that after calculating everything and doing all the guessing, that Kentucky came in at number 7. But let me explain how that happened. I have the Caps with a 12-12 SEC record with series wins over Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn, Mississippi State, and South Carolina. I've got UK winning all 4 home series and then winning 1 road series at South Carolina. I think Kentucky probably has the most favorable schedule in the SEC this year. Now, they do play Texas in Austin. That's difficult. But no OU, no Florida, no Tennessee, no Texas A&M. A big part of these predictions in a 15-team league is who you draw on the schedule. I think other teams behind Kentucky are probably better than this team. Not all of them, but some of them. But with this draw, I like UK to have a good year in the SEC. But there's also good players on this roster. It's just not all about the schedule. There's good players. Ohio State transfer Mackenzie Bump hit over 300 last year in Columbus. I think she's going to be a big part of the lineup. Allison Blum was a top 75 recruit and should make an impact somewhere, whether that's out in the outfield or in the infield. But hey, what I like the most about Kentucky is their schedule. And if I'm right about this prediction and the Cats going to have a fantastic year, they need to send a Christmas card to the SEC offices. Arkansas is at number 6. I've got the Hogs at 13-11 with series wins over Ole Miss, Kentucky, South Carolina, and LSU. Hogs will win a game in every single SEC series, including the Oklahoma and Tennessee series. But this is a team I like. I really like. Like this team a lot. Lost a ton of seniors, but they did get Kaylee Wyckoff from Texas Tech. Big 12 fans familiar with her. She's a very good player. Bree Ellis is back, and she can just hit the ball a ton. Reagan Johnson is a very good outfielder. I think she's poised for a big-time year. Ella McDowell was picked by Softball America as Freshman of the Year. Guys, this program is going to hit. That's what they do. It's what they do with DJ Gasso, who's the hitting coach in Fayetteville. Even with some losses, I think he's going to figure out that side of things for the Razorbacks once again. It's not a question to me if Arkansas is going to be good. They're going to be good. The big question is, can they break through and make it to Oklahoma City? Is this the Arkansas team that can do it this year? Well, if they can find consistent pitching and replace some production that left, the answer is yes, absolutely. Because the Hogs are going to be very, very tough again in 2025. That gets us to the top 5. Let's release these individually now. Coming in at number 5, Texas A&M. I've got A&M at 15-9 with series wins over Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Missouri, and Arkansas. Yeah, I think that this team is legit, and I think I'm going to pick them to make the Women's College World Series. Big part of that is because Emily Kennedy is one of the best pitchers, not just in the SEC, but in all of college softball as well. I'm a big fan of Coco Woolley. I think she's an exceptional infielder. Mac Barbara is going to have a big year at first base, at the plate as well. I can easily find a lot of reasons to like this Texas A&M team. I would still be a little surprised if we're talking about the Aggies winning the SEC this year. But at the same time, if they take down Florida in College Station in that opening SEC series, then maybe we need to really pay attention to the Aggies as an SEC contender in 2025. Came so close last year, had Texas on the ropes, but I think A&M probably gained some confidence from that. Actually beat Texas in a fall game, so watch out for A&M. Again, I've got them at number 5. I don't have them at number 1 or number 2, but outside of a home series against Florida and then a road series against Tennessee, A&M has a pretty favorable schedule that oddly doesn't include either Oklahoma or Texas. So if you're looking for a dark horse pick to win the SEC this year that's out of the top 3, top 4, I think Texas A&M might be your best choice. At number 4, I have the reigning back-to-back SEC champs, the Tennessee Volunteers. I have the Vols with a 17-7 SEC record with series wins over Georgia, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Auburn, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. 3 of those series wins I have in a sweep for the Vols. The 2 series I have Tennessee losing are the Oklahoma and Texas series on the road, but I do have the Vols winning 1 game each in both of those series. Carlin Pickens is the name to know with Tennessee. SEC Pitcher of the Year last season. She's back, and she could absolutely win this award again. I think she's in the discussion for not just best pitcher in the SEC, but best pitcher in all of college softball. Vols can beat anyone, and I mean anyone, when she's in the circle. I think that she's that good. Former Sooner Sophia Nugent can hit the ball a ton. Taylor Pannell can do a lot of things, both offensively and defensively. This is a very, very good squad that you got to think is extremely hungry after being upset by Alabama at home in a super regional last year. Bit of a tough draw for Tennessee, having to go to Oklahoma and to Texas in SEC play. But this is another team that I expect to see in Oklahoma City for the Women's College World Series. Not only is this a team that I think will push for an SEC crown this year, I think that they're in that discussion. In my opinion, this is a team that if they make it to Oklahoma City, I think you got to label them as a very strong contender to win the national championship when they're there as well. Like Tennessee a lot, they come in at number 4. To the final 3. I don't think there's too much surprise that Florida, Oklahoma, and Texas are the final 3 here. But at number 3, I've got the Texas Longhorns. I think a 17-7 SEC record is waiting for the Horns, which is identical to the Vols, but Texas will hold the tiebreaker because they win the series. I've got Texas with series wins over Auburn, Mississippi State, Missouri, Tennessee, LSU, and Kentucky. Bit of a tough draw for Texas having to go to both Florida and Oklahoma this year. But here's the thing. This could be the best Texas team of all time. And maybe that's probably even the expectation at this point in Austin. Made the championship series last year, 2 of the past 3 years. They've got a ton of talent returning from last year's team. There's a reason why a lot of people have them picked number 1, not just in the SEC, but in all of college softball as well. Tegan Devon burst out of the scene last year, excellent in the circle, just so good. Could be an All-American this year, would honestly be surprised if she's not. Reese Atwood will be one of the best players in the sport this year. One player of the year last year, in my mind. One of the best players that Texas as a softball program has ever had. Katie Stewart's good. Mac Morgan's good. There's just so many players to name for Texas. I think this will be the best Texas team of all time. The question is that good enough to beat Oklahoma? Is that good enough to beat Florida? Is it enough to win the national championship? Because that's the huge question mark, and those are the expectations this year. Great spot to be for Texas heading into 2025, but this might be the highest of expectations a Longhorn team has ever had entering a season. 2 spots left. Who's number 1? Who's going to win the SEC in 2025? Is it Oklahoma or is it Florida? At number 2, I have, pause for effect, I've got the Florida Gators at number 2. The Gators at number 2 with an 18-6 record. And I'm going to tell you how I ultimately decided the top 2. But first, let me tell you about the Gators because there's a lot to say. So many good players on this roster. Where do you begin? I guess I'll begin with the reigning SEC Player of the Year in Jocelyn Erickson. Was one of the best players in the sport last year. Incredible catcher, so deadly at the plate. 15 home runs, 86 RBIs. She is special, and she may put up even better numbers this year. Corby Otis is an elite outfielder who Softball America thinks is a top 10 player nationally. Keegan Rothrock stole the show last season in OKC. She's in the discussion for SEC Pitcher of the Year. Kendra Falby in the outfield. Reagan Walsh is excellent. Riley Holtorf was a massive portal get from Washington and was one of the best shortstops available during the offseason. You get the point. Just so much top-tier talent, so much depth. I don't know if this team will end up being the best Florida team of all time, but I think that they're going to be in the discussion. They're that good. Super high expectations for the Gators, but they can meet all of them. They're that type of team. This is a team that can win it all, both SEC and nationally. A lot of experience with a lot of big game experience as well after their postseason run. Big plus for the Gators as well with the schedule. Both Oklahoma and Texas come to Gainesville this year, and that matters. One of those series is going to be the biggest series in the sport this year because I think the SEC regular season crown comes down to the final series because Oklahoma will win the SEC in 2025. No, really, they're going to do it. They're going to win the SEC in 2025. New team, same results. OU is going to hoist another trophy. The only difference is they don't have this trophy yet, but they're about to get it. OU finishes with an 18-6 record with series wins over everybody they play. Now, we're used to seeing the Sooners sweep their way through a conference season, but I only have OU sweeping 2 series this year, which is still very impressive in this league, but it's obviously fewer than what we're used to seeing with OU. I've got Oklahoma sweeping South Carolina and Mississippi State, with the Sooners taking 2 out of 3 in every other conference series. The Sooners do get Tennessee, Texas, and Florida on the schedule, but 2 of those are at home. Tough road slate, though, for OU, visiting Florida, back-to-back trips at Arkansas and Missouri, and then an Alabama trip, a difficult 4 series on the road away from Norman. But here's where I think it's won. It's going to come down to this. I think the race comes down to the final series of the year in Gainesville, Florida. And I would imagine that is exactly what the SEC was hoping for when they put OU in Florida on the schedule. I think that we're going to know going into that final weekend that whoever wins the series between OU and Florida is going to win the SEC crown. And if I'm right, the build-up that week is going to be incredible. The weekend itself is going to be incredible, and it will be a major win for the sport of softball. Yes, SEC softball, but just really the sport of softball as a whole, because so many people will be interested to see what happens in that final series. There's new faces, yeah, but it's still the same program. And all this program knows how to do is win. You know about Ella Parker and Cassidy Pickering. For my money, the best offensive duo that you're going to find in the sport this year. But what about the names that you may not know as well right now? Ilana Agbayani, get to know that name. She's going to be one of the best infielders and leadoff hitters in the country this year. Same thing with Abby Dayton in the outfield with her incredible track record coming from Utah. Nellie McEnroe-Marinas is destined for stardom at third base. Sam Landry in the circle. Bella Smith in the circle. The number 1 recruiting class is going to make a big impact. There are so many names to know once again with this team. Maybe not as many household names entering a season as you're used to with an Oklahoma softball team. But trust me, you're going to know these names really well and really soon as well. OU has found the next group of stars, and I think that they're ready to write their own story. And what a story that would be if OU wins a loaded SEC in year 1. Yes, ultimately, it's about winning the national championship. That's what's most important. That'll never change. But winning the SEC, winning this league in year 1, when a lot of people, including the coaches, are picking you third in the conference, would be just another major win for this program. And I think that they're going to do it. Agree or disagree with my selections? Drop your thoughts in the comments as always. And thank you for watching.